Pick up a brochure at guest services for more details. If you're a parent, your child will love demonstrate our children's gatherings at work picture, and your child can be a part of it during summertime services. And we also have nursery available for nursing mothers and nursing mothers. First Wednesday is a gathering where we go deeper in worship, deeper in prayer, praying together to build God's kingdom, deeper in teaching. We propose to take people into the passion and purpose. We have a communion every first Wednesday and an awesome gathering for all ages for kids and students. It takes place on the first Wednesday of every month. If you're a student in 7th and 8th grade or in high school, we have real life student ministry every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mason, 1288 Cedar Street, Mason. We're there for games, food, friends, exciting music, teaching, and small groups. That is the place to be. If you're newer to Germany, come to our welcome party on 4 Sundays night. You get to know the church better, the staff, food, fun, food. If you haven't been to the welcome party yet, this is your next step. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for our Sunday gathering. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact the pastor or someone from our connections team or guest service. You can also go to our website for giving, live streaming, and you can sign up for my youth email for spiritual education. So if you're in the cafe, please make your way in. At any point you have any questions about anything going on here during the service, don't hesitate to talk to the pastor, or connections team member, or guest services. If you're a parent, our child gets breakfast during the gathering. We have a nursing mother's room in the back on the left, and you can go and miss any part of the day. Better yet, we have an incredible children's ministry where kids can go age appropriate gatherings for their children. So as a parent, you can rest assured that your little one can have fun while you're in the main auditorium. It is our hope that from the moment you arrive in our parking lot to the spirit-led moment of your response time, you experience God every moment, and that you live life different because of Him. We believe in a culture of honor, and we define that by celebrating what God is doing in people. So this week, take time to honor those involved in your life. God bless, and enjoy the gathering.
Good morning, Journey Life Church. We believe at this church that God is with us when we worship. He's with you who are streaming at home or online. He loves us. He cares about us. Let's stand up and show our God how much He is, how much we love Him. Not gonna wait for the walls to fall. I know a name that can bring them down. has destroyed them all. Up from the grave, he is with us now. Light of the world, trample the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Come on, we gather this morning together to shout out the victory that God has already won. We declare the victories from the past. We declare the victories that are going to happen in the future because His promises are true. Come on, I says His promises are true. We don't have to worry. We don't have to have anxiety. It doesn't matter. He's got it, past, present, and future. Come on. The gates of hell will never stand a chance. Your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am, will fail. No weapon formed against your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. The gates of hell will never stand a chance. Your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. No word will fail, no weapon formed against your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. The gates of hell never stand a chance. Your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. No word will fail, no weapon formed against your name prevails, Jesus, the great I am. Light of the world, trample the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Light of the world, trample the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. Yeah, Jesus!
I've seen the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I've seen your promises in fulfillment. You cover my life, you cover my life. I've seen the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I've seen your promises in fulfillment. beside me. The winter storms made way for spring. In every season, from where I'm standing, I've seen the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I've seen your promises in fulfillment. You cover my life. You cover my life. Help me remember when I'm weak. Fear may come, but fear will leave. You lead my heart to victory. You are my strength, and you always will be. I've seen the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I've seen your promises in fulfillment. You cover my life. You cover my life. I've seen the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I've seen your promises in fulfillment. You cover my life. You cover my life. God, we thank you that you cover everything in our lives. That as soon as we ask you to, you come in and you cover every mistake, every failure. God, you fill the empty space and you bring us back to a place that we can come to you face to face. God, we thank you that you desired our hearts that much. We're going to move into a place that we can celebrate that that's the God that we serve. That he has already come and he's already overcome everything that we've already done. And that we're going to celebrate this morning that that's what he's always going to do in the future. That he is never going to let us down. Because that's our God. Our God does not let us down. You're never gonna let me 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 down. Sing it out. You're never gonna let me down. 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 You're never your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I've seen your promises in fulfillment. You cover my life, you cover my life. I've seen the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I've seen your promises in fulfillment. You cover my life, you cover my life. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. I've tried so hard to see it. Took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve it. You take the broken things and raise them to glory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. champion, for being one with no rival who's overcome everything for us. Just to see our face and just to hear our worship. God, we thank you for who you are. Welcome again to Journey Life Church. You guys may be seated.
Hello, my name is Cameron Spees, the Journey Young Adults Director here at Journey Life Church. We are so glad that you're here today. If you're a first-time guest with us today, we would love to get connected with you. One way we can get connected is by texting WELCOME to 517-618-9287. Another way that you can get connected is by joining our Journey Life Church Facebook group. It's a great way to connect with others and to also pray for others. If you're new here in person with us, you can go ahead and head back to the Welcome Center after the gathering, and we have a gift for you. If you have a prayer request, you can go ahead and go to journeylifechurch.com, scroll to the bottom, and fill out the form. Or if you have a win you'd like to share, you can do the same. Another thing that you can do is comment if you're online in the video for a prayer, and we will pray for you on the spot. To join us in person, we are asking that you please pre-register online at journeylifechurch.com. Real Life Summer Retreat is coming up this August 7th and 8th. You can find out more information on that and for your student in the back at the Welcome Center. There's a date change for intercessory prayer this month. It will be on Wednesday the 22nd at 6 p.m. If you would like more info on this, you can talk to Diane Kilpatrick. Hey parents of Journey Kids, we will be celebrating our kids last Sunday in their current classroom on July 26th, and on August 2nd will be the move-up day. If your child is 3 years old, they'll be moving from tiny town into Smallville, and if they are in first grade, they'll be moving from Smallville into Big City. If they're in 7th grade, they'll be moving from Big City into Real Life, which meets Wednesdays at 7 p.m. at the Mason campus. For students who are in 6th grade, they're allowed to join Real Life for the first Wednesday of every month. Our Unhindered series is coming up August 9th. Everyone has a set of chains, from you or what someone else is putting on you. We believe there is a way to break every chain. What if you could live life unhindered? What if you could worship God unhindered? This message series will show you an unhindered life through worshiping God. Welcome again to Journey Life Church. We are so glad you're here. We hope you have an amazing experience. Well, you guys know what time it is. It's time for offering. So the verse we're looking into today is 1 Peter 2:6. It says, "See, I lay a stone in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame." God is so good. Isn't it great that God is so good that we can trust in him with our finances? Come on. Can I get a louder amen? Thank you. All right. So yeah, it's super important to surrender every part of our life to God, and we will never be put to shame for that. So let's pray over offering really quick. First things first though, if you have offering, you can mail it in, or you can go online at journeylifechurch.org or .com, one of the two. It's .com, yeah. And there's also crates in the back where you can put your offering if you get one of the envelopes or something. All right, so let's pray over offering real quick. Jesus, we thank you that we're able to gather here today and to have the capability to worship you and to hear Pastor Ben speak. I pray that you bless his words, and I pray that you bless his offering. In Jesus' name, amen.
Here's some easy steps and a secure way to give online at Journey Life Church. Go to journeylifechurch.com. On the home page, select Menu, then scroll down and select Give. Type in the amount you'd like to give and then select your designation. Once you have typed in the amount you want to give and selected the designation, select Next. Here you can input your payment information, then select Submit. Once you have completed your payment information and verified your payment amount, select Confirm. A receipt will be emailed to you, and lastly, select Done.
you woke up like March 12th or 11th that life would look like it does right now, for real? This social distancing thing, which, by the way, isn't it like an oxymoron anyway? Like social and distancing, isn't that sort of, I find that hilarious, but I was trying to think of my own, like I want to coin a new term for that, but I couldn't think of one. I don't have a better one, so unless you have one, I was trying to think of something different, but it's been difficult. It's been interesting, but I probably don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you guys all know that. I'm going to give you a little chance, okay? This is going to help all of us in the room, or maybe it'll make it worse. I don't know, but I'm going to give you a little chance, and if you're online and you're watching, you can do this too because you can type in the comments, okay? I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. One of you that's sitting next to somebody, just vent for about 10 seconds about how hard this has been and the worst part about this whole like COVID-19, social distancing, mask to wear, to not to wear, all the stuff, okay? Just 10 seconds, okay? If you're watching online, you can do this too. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. What's been the hardest part? Okay, the other person now. The other person, 10 seconds. Ready? Go. Now, I don't know if you feel better or who feels a little better. Who feels a little worse? I don't know. No hands, actually. Everyone's just like, I feel the same, Pastor Ben. I feel the same. Well, I'm not listening in on all of your conversations. I don't know what you're saying or what the hardest part about all of this has been, but I would guess that if we were to boil it, a lot of it down, maybe not all of it, but if we were to boil a lot of it down, it would have to do with the idea of pressure. Everyone say pressure. All right, pressure. The world, our world, your world has a lot of it right now, doesn't it? Your world and the world you're living in and I'm living in, we have a lot of pressure today. You know, maybe you feel pressure about wearing a mask. You know, we all were pretty pressured with the old Amber Alert. Who got that on their phone, right? We got the little Amber Alert to wear our mask, right? We feel pressured. We have a lot of pressure. We have a lot of pressure at work. A lot of you, and I've talked to a lot of different people, I've been a part of some different groups and coaching groups, and I've heard about jobs just completely changing, right, over this COVID-19 thing, and worlds being turned upside down in your job, right? Some of you are questioning whether you're going to have a job, or if you were going to go back to the same job you had, or if it's going to look a little bit different, right? And so you have a lot of pressure to do things a little differently. Students feel a lot of pressure. Students are feeling pressure from, their parents, from school, and, what's happening, and am I going to be able to do all my extracurricular activities? Pressure. Maybe you feel it in the form of social media. There's a lot of people pressuring you to do a lot of things or say a lot of things, right? I've got people that are complaining to me that I'm not saying enough on social media, but then when I do say something, then they blast me for it, and I'm like, what? Jeez, I can't win, right? You have pressure. We all have pressure. Our world has a lot of pressure right now, and there's no bigger way to give an example of this than when we look at our schools, when we look at our school system and where we're at. And by the way, this is going to be really practical. You can tell by the whiteboard, right? You're like, we're going to do some whiteboard session. Yeah, we are. But for example, we don't know if school is going to resume to normal activities, what it's going to look like. Are we going to be able to do the same kinds of things we were pre-COVID-19? Schools are in a tough spot. How many of you would agree? Schools are in a tough spot. And we have educators and people who are trying to make decisions, and I heard someone say this once, and I was like, I feel like this is a good example of what our education system is trying to do right now. They're trying to build a plane while already in the air, right? They're like, this thing is going, education has to happen, but we're trying to build this thing and make it up as we go along, right? So schools are in a tough spot, and we need to recognize that, give them some grace. But here's a lot of questions. Okay, there's just a lot of questions, which boils down to a lot of pressure. How do we best serve our students while dealing with teachers and staff who are uncomfortable returning to the classroom? How do we restart school safely for everyone concerned? How do we make wise decisions with imperfect information? Right? A lot of questions.
How do we prioritize our students and parents while still navigating the school board rules and local government mandates? And how do we allow parents any input in the decision-making process? You know, these are things schools are wrestling with right now. And I applaud them for it. But how are politics, local or national, influencing us when or if we're going to resume to school? And what it's going to look like? How do we deal with all the newest unknowns? What if it gets worse? What if we wait just a little longer? What if we wait too long, right? So schools are in a tough spot, but parents are also. Who's a parent? Come on, you're a parent. Yeah, you're a parent. Okay, so parents are also in a tough spot, and we're frustrated, or we have a lot of questions as parents, don't we? Will virtual learning be effective? I think we all know the answer to that after what just happened, like those 3 months that we were trying to do it, right? Will virtual learning be effective? Will my children thrive, right? Or what about their mental health? What about my mental health, right? How about remote classes? How are they going to interfere with my work schedule, right? Pressure. Who's going to watch my kids at home? Why haven't we heard anything yet, right? Questions. When will we return to school? When will it be safe? Will we have sports? Come on, I want sports, right? Who's looking out for my kids' best interest, right? What if they just keep delaying? What's at stake for my family? Is it this bad everywhere? These are all questions that we have. And if you're like most of us, the pressure then leads to fear. The pressure leads, and what it does is it feeds our fears, doesn't it? When you start to have all that pressure, and that pressure begins to mount and build, it starts to feed some of your deepest, worst fears. I know it has for me the last 4 months, for real. You know, the pressure of, or the fear of never measuring up. I'm like, am I going to measure up? Am I going to be able to overcome this? Am I going to be good enough? Am I good enough to really do the job that's set before me? Right? So we have these fears of not measuring up or not being good enough, or the fear of never being in the group or of friends that you want to be. You know, if you're a kid or a teenager or a young adult and you're trying to navigate your relationships and you're like, you know, all this pressure begins to lead to the fear of maybe I'm not going to have the group of friends I want now, or not having the job, or maybe not having a job at all. And it starts to lead to that fear, right? It starts to feed that fear of never having the sense of belonging that you want. Now, I'm not trying to get you on edge unnecessarily. I'm not. I'm just trying to set the stage and set the tone for probably where we're all at, right? In July 19th, 2020. Not July 19th, 2019, but 2020. But in order for healing to take place, in order for God to really do what only He can do, and the Holy Spirit to come in and move, then we have to acknowledge where we're at a lot. I know I have the last few months. I've had to acknowledge where I'm at. There are some mornings you wake up, right, and you're like, I'm just going to acknowledge that I need a mental day because I'm just not, I can't handle it right now, right? But I'm no doctor like Dr. Jared here. I'm no expert on healing. But I'm pretty sure that when you look throughout the scriptures and you look throughout the Bible, that there wasn't ever healing on a person who just didn't know they needed to get healed. Right? It wasn't like Jesus walked by people and was like, boom, your arm's healed. Oh, I didn't even know that. I didn't know my arm was broken, right? He didn't walk by somebody and was spit in the ground and then rub mud on the face of the eyes and the guy was like, oh, I didn't even know I was blind, right? No. They all, every instance of healing, they all acknowledge that they need healing of some kind. So I think that's helpful for us to realize that we all need to acknowledge where we're at sometimes. I know I've had to do that for the last little while. Now, many of us are familiar with these words that I'm going to write up here. We're really sometimes all too familiar with them, but sometimes we're a little too familiar with these words. Sometimes we use them as excuses, but stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety. Right? We have we use those words like, hey, I'm stressed about what movie we should watch. Or, I'm a little anxious about what to wear today. We use these words sometimes a little too often. But according to leading health research right now, many more people with and without anxiety disorders are feeling more anxious right now. So whether you have an anxiety disorder or not, we all are acknowledging we're all a little more anxious right now in 2020. According to the latest research, 49% of people are struggling with anxiety right now, as opposed to 37% pre-COVID-19. So that's almost half of our population. So half of this room, half of you are dealing with and struggling with anxiety, and many of you for the very first time. And so I've had to acknowledge this in myself. I'm not one who's been like an anxious person, and I've had times in my life where my wife will notice when I'm anxious and I'm not. I don't notice, like she notices I am, but I don't notice I am. And but I have to acknowledge during this time that I have times where I feel a lot more anxious. According to the National Institute of Health, nearly 1 in 3 of all adolescents, so that's between 13 and 18, okay? Nearly 1 in 3 will experience an anxiety disorder. Just get this. This is pre-COVID-19 because these numbers have been steadily rising between 2007 and 2012. Anxiety disorders in children and teens went up 20% from 2007 to 2012, and they do this research every about like 8 to 10 years, so they think this is going to go up probably another at least 20% above that. I find it hilarious. I'm not trying to rail on social media all too much, but when the 2 largest social media platforms came out, like really hit the scene? 2006 was Facebook, and this was 2007, right? And then 2010 was Instagram. Those 2 media platforms, and then YouTube was right in there too. That way they really hit the scene and exploded. So you feel stress and you feel anxiety in a lot of different ways when you're trying to sleep at night, right? Or students when they're trying to, when you sit down to take a test. I know none of you have done this in the room. You sit down to take a test that you completely forgot about, and you start to feel a little anxious, Or you, maybe at work, if you're like, you sit down with your boss and you're like, I completely forgot about what I was supposed to do, and now I'm sitting there and I got to give oh no, right? You feel a little anxious in those moments. When you're talking to coworkers about another shutdown or a job change, again, right? When you're talking to your parents about what's going to happen, and when you're talking to your kids about what we're doing, we start to feel these feelings. When you're arguing over that same thing with your spouse, again, right? That over and over, and you come back to, I swear we had this conversation, like we fought about this just like recently again, and now you're back fighting about it. According to a pediatric website, healthychildren.org, there are a number of factors that contribute to a dramatic rise of anxiety in our kids. And I would argue that these also are an example of the rise in anxiety in a lot of us. So hear me it's not just for kids. I think when I look around the landscape of where we're at, it's probably a lot of adults too. But here is, in addition to genetics, brain chemistry, personality, life events, take these into consideration from this website. Number 1, high expectations and pressure to succeed. That we see a rise in anxiety, dramatic rise because of high expectations and pressure to succeed. Between like all the standardized tests and where our culture is right now in this culture of achievement and a culture of improvement. Sometimes my wife and I have talked about this, that this culture of improvement, sometimes like I believe that we need to keep improving, and at Journey that's one of the things we want to do is have a culture of improvement, but sometimes that can lead to high expectations that you can never meet. Right? I talking to anybody in the room. Do you understand? Right? We feel that at work probably. Like there's expectations that I don't know if I'm ever going to meet those. In 2016, 41%, I'll back up. A survey done every year by Higher Education Research asks incoming college freshmen if they feel overwhelmed by all they have to do. And in 2016, 41% of students said yes to that. compared to 28% in 2000 and 18% in 1985. So this has been steadily rising, this high expectation and pressure to succeed. And then another thing that we would consider is a world that feels scary and threatening. We know that now. Like before, it was a lot of school shootings and, students were having to do lockdown drills and all these other things, right? And now we have a world that's scary and threatening, more than we've ever been in before. We've seen an increase in terrorist attacks and all these. We see all these things on the news too about COVID-19, and we're threatened and we feel scared. And then number 3, social media. So we have to take into account these 3 things, and I didn't say it, the pediatric website did, okay? Social media, one of the leading reasons why there's such a rise. Today's children and teens are constantly connected to social media, like constantly. Some of the stats are that students spend between 8 to 10 hours in front of a screen every day. So they're connected to social media and posts, and it's really hard for them not to compare themselves to other people. And comparison is a killer. Like that, we'll just destroy ourselves. So there are also some children who have unexpected and disproportionate reactions to normal developmental experiences, like going to school. So they don't quite understand. They have a disproportionate kind of reality of what it looks like to go to school, to do everyday routine things, like going to a party or a sleepover or going to a camp or any of these things. The crazy thing is we experience it, you and I do, in so many areas of our lives that we don't even often notice it. We don't often notice the stress and anxiety. Is it anxiety? Is it a little bit of stress? Is it both? Which one is which? Is it normal? Like, am I supposed to feel this way? Am I an overload a little bit? Do I need to get help? Or am I taking something and blowing it out of proportion? Or do I need to just get over it? Which, by the way, that never helps anybody. I thought it did. I've tried to tell my kids that. I've tried to tell my wife that, but that never goes well, right? It never goes well. And we have a child that struggles with anxiety, and we understand now. And I understand some of the ramifications of what it means, and I still fall into that trap of just get over it, right? Because that's like you want to just say that. You want to just you want to say something, so you're like, just get over it. But that never helps. Every person is different, so it's not always easy to recognize the warning signs of anxiety. It's not always easy. We can't always understand it. Sometimes we don't recognize the warning signs until we're in the hospital. Sometimes we don't recognize the warning signs until something dramatic happens in our job, or something happens in your marriage, and you're like, I can't believe I've been depressed and anxious all this time. The pressure, we feel different things, and there are symptoms of anxiety that we can notice. There are symptoms. The pressure on your chest that you feel, that pressure maybe all the time, that you can't breathe, that's a sign of anxiety. Of your breathing becomes harder, and you start to notice it a little too much. Or maybe at nighttime you can't fall asleep, and you just have your mind racing. It just goes, right? It's just on that hamster wheel, and you never get off the hamster wheel when you go to sleep. And that's a sign of anxiety. Or there's those knots in your stomach, and you can't feel like you can focus on that one thing or those two things that you used to be able to focus on. You used to really be able to sit down and do a puzzle, and now you can't puzzle anymore. You can't focus. I love puzzles, by the way. I like to I'll just dive in, and then if I see a puzzle, I can't I have to walk past it, and I have to stop, and I got to do the puzzle, But you have a tough time. Maybe a sign for you is you have a tough time relaxing. You go on vacation, you have your day off, and you just can't relax. You can't take the big, deep breath. You can't sit down. Or you have sudden changes in irritability. This is how my wife always knows when I'm a little bit more anxious and stressful, when I'm blowing up a little bit too much, right? When I start to get a little bit more on edge, I get a little more angry, and she's like, Ben, you need to take a step back. Are you stressed? And I'm like, no, I'm not stressed. No, I feel fine. That is for me, when these sudden mood changes of irritability, that's a sign of anxiety. It's a warning sign. Or you have that recurring fear or worry about everyday, like routine activities. I know in our house that sometimes what is the stress or the anxiety, it's the everyday eating, or it's the brushing of the teeth. Those are routine, habitual things that we do, and that's what brings on anxiety. It's a warning sign. So what do we do then? What's normal? What is normal to do? And most importantly, can you avoid these feelings? Are we going to be able to avoid them? So let's start on the whiteboard. Here's what I want us to do. We're going to differentiate between stress and anxiety here because they actually are different. Of course, many times they go hand in hand, yes. But here's what I want to do, and I want you to shout out. This is participatory. That means you can shout out to me. You can actually yell at me, all right? Words and things, and I'll write them on the board. But here's the difference, okay? First, we're going to start with stress, characteristics or examples of stress. Now, here's the difference. Stress is specific. Stress is a reaction to an actual situation. All right, like pressure that you feel overwhelmed of a project at work or a big game that you have, you're stressed. I get stressed sometimes coming on stage talking in front of you guys. That stress of a situation. This is very situational. Okay, stress is usually short term, and when the specific thing we're stressed about passes, the stress usually goes away. Okay, then it's usually gone. The stress can be gone, like packing for a vacation. That can be stressful. You're like, I'm supposed to be going on vacation and resting, and why is it so stressful to pack? So I'm going to write some of these things up here. What are some examples or characteristics of stress? And then we'll go to anxiety so that we can see some of the differences. For you, what are some characteristics, examples of stress? I heard two things. What? Headaches. I don't know if I'm going to spell it right. External. They're external. Okay. These are my chicken scratch. You'll know what it is. You just see the H and the E. What did you say, Dave, back there? Interview. What are other things? Deadlines, yeah. Deadlines. What else? Packing. Someone, yeah. Is that what you said? Yeah, okay. Change. Okay. That can be both. That'll probably be the other one too. What else? Any other? What? A relationship, yeah. These are all things that can cause stress. What else? Specific, they're more specific things. What else? Chores, yeah. Did I spell that right? Chores? Money
and bills.
Money. You know what? This one's not working too well. We're going over to this one. Ooh, wow. That one's awesome. That's the better one. All right, so what about anxiety? What are some? Now, here, let me explain this. Anxiety is not very specific as much. It's more of a reaction to the world or your world. It's a reaction to your world as a whole. So it's a general feeling of unease or fear that doesn't go away when the stressful circumstance does. So this is that when something doesn't go away, the fear, the feeling, it doesn't go away even when the circumstance, even when some of these things we just talked about go away. Okay, so it's like uncertain of the future. It could be, how am I going to supply for my family, especially right now? Anxiety is something you feel all the time about all things. It's something that kind of crosses lots of different areas of your life. So what are some characteristics and examples of anxiety we might have? Yeah, work can be. Work, and that's like usually a general, like I'm just anxious about my work. It's not the deadline, it's not the interview, it's just work in general. What else? Parenting. Oh, what? Parenting, yeah. I mean, that's not really, it's good. What else? Someone else said something. Worry, yeah. Wow, phonetically. Yeah. Health, yeah, anxious about health, especially right now. Time. Do I have enough? Future. Civil unrest. For reals. Personal image. So these are, and we could keep going probably on the list, but you notice, and this was helpful for me, when I look at, you've got the more specific things and then the things that we get anxious about. You usually can't put your finger on the specific thing or the exact circumstance. It's something as a whole. But here's the thing, contrary to what we many times think, stress and anxiety aren't always a bad thing. Stress helps us accomplish what we need to accomplish, right? So sometimes you feel a little stressed because you have a deadline or you need to pack, but it helps us accomplish what needs to happen, you know? You feel a little stressed about that situation and you feel like you need to accomplish something. It pushes us to work harder and be better sometimes, you know? An athlete always stresses their body. They're going to stress their body to the max so that they can push themselves farther than they ever thought they could go, you know? But then anxiety becomes a problem when it sticks around for too long and is no longer helpful. Anxiety comes from the same fear. So hear me in this. Anxiety actually comes from the same fear comes from the same fear part of our brain that puts us on high alert when danger is nearby. So have you ever visited the Grand Canyon? Who's visited the Grand Canyon? You've been like, okay, so have you ever felt, if you visited the Grand Canyon, you know what it's like, or just when you go to a cliff or you're looking off at Niagara Falls or something like that, you have an anxious feeling. It's not stress, that is anxiety that you're feeling because you're walking up to the very edge of a cliff and you're like, I'm in danger, right? I'm in danger, don't step off the edge. That is a healthy fear of what could happen, you know? That is helpful to us. The problem is when anxiety hangs around for longer than it should, then it becomes no longer helpful to us and it's damaging. So that's important for us to remember. When there's no danger that we need to pay attention to, but our mind and body, they continue to act like there is. Our mind and body continue to act like danger, 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 and our body is on high alert. That's how our bodies begin to break down and they start to get tired. One thing I noticed, and you might have noticed also, you might feel this, that during these last few months, I haven't been doing as much work, I feel, but I felt more tired. Has anybody felt that? Come on, raise your hand if you felt that a little bit. You felt, during this time, why do I feel more tired, but I don't feel like I'm doing as much? That's because your body, when we get anxious, your body gets on high alert, and it continues to stay on high alert when it's not supposed to anymore, and it starts to overwhelm you, and it starts to make you tired. And when we live with that constant, our body becomes stressed, and it wears us out. So, at that point, anxiety isn't helpful for pointing out danger anymore. It's hurting you. It's keeping you from functioning in life as normal. It's keeping you from functioning in normal, everyday life, doing your everyday routines. So the question is, what do you do about it? If you feel anxious almost all the time, okay, what do you do about this? Now this, I understand that some of you in here, this is going to be I'm hitting home, and according to the research, at least half of you. So I'm hitting at least, I know I'm hitting at least half of you anyway. But some of you, maybe this isn't for you right now, but it will be helpful for you in the future as you refer back to this or you remember what we talked about this morning. And there's a lot of ways that you can cope and you can deal with. And one of the things we've done through COVID, you probably had a lot of it too. You know, I saw a lot more people walking in our neighborhood. during this time. You know, one thing that we do to cope is we go for walks. We go for drives, you know. With our daughter, sometimes we have to sit down and do breathing exercises. And there's a lot of different ways to cope. But I want to talk about something that all of us can do. Even though it's not a new problem, it's a human problem. This isn't just for teens, it's not just for young adults or adolescents, this is for all of us. And in Psalm 56, I love what David did. We're going to go through Psalm 56 because obviously we know David is one of the most famous kings of all of Israel. And in the book of Psalms, there's a lot of times, if you read through the Psalms, just read through some of them and you'll realize that there were a lot of times David felt pretty anxious or stressed. You know, and that's where this comes in. David, at the time, he didn't know he was going to get out of the situation, but he's in the Philistine area. Remember Goliath? David killed Goliath? Goliath was from Gath, okay? Goliath of Gath. And he is actually he's like captured by his enemies, the people from Gath. So these are the people that he killed the giant, all right? He killed their big warrior, their giant, and now he's captured by them, all right? He doesn't know what they're going to do. And by the way, he's running for his life from Saul, okay? So this guy has a lot of anxiety going, a lot of stress in his life right now. And here's what he says. He writes in Psalm 56, "Be merciful to me, my God, for my enemies are in hot pursuit. All day long they press their attack. My adversaries pursue me all day long." Okay. Anybody feeling that in COVID-19? Like, I read this and I was like, I feel like part of this. I feel like, adversaries. I feel like I'm pressed on all these. We're being attacked in all these different ways, right? It's coming from civil unrest. It's coming from, danger of sickness or all of this stuff. But here's the one thing that I don't want us to miss. He names the thing that's stressing him out. First thing, right out the gate in this psalm, he's naming the thing that's stressing him out, that's giving him anxiety. It puts a general fear, okay? Here's what happens. The trickiest thing about anxiety, it puts a fear in your heart, and if you can name it, it starts to take away the power once you start to name that thing. Feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, name it. But David doesn't end there, and I love that he goes on. He says in Psalm 56, 3-4, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you, in God, whose word I praise. In God I trust and am not afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" So check out what David does here. He doesn't just stay there, because that's what happens with a lot of us, is we just stay there naming it. We're calling it out. But here's what he says. His circumstances don't change. He's still in captivity. He is still stuck. He still is fearful of his life, and he's pressed on all sides. His circumstances don't change, but his focus does. He switches his focus. His situation doesn't shift, but his perspective changes. And I think last time I was up here, we talked about perspective. Right? We did the little whole example thing, and we did perspective. Tony Robbins said this: focus equals feeling, and feelings drive our actions. If you think life is over, you will feel that and you'll act accordingly. This is so strong, what he says. And don't you see that with a lot of the people right now who are screaming at you and me on social media? They're screaming at everybody, and they feel like life is over. And by the way, I should probably preface this. What we're talking about this morning comes from the fact that you and I, if we are believers, we have a certain hope that other people don't have. Amen. We have certain life because God said, Jesus said, "I have come to give life and life to the fullest." And we try to live that out, right? We try to live out the actions of Jesus, and we have a certain hope that other people don't have. So they're going to continue to act out their feelings. They're going to continue to act like life is over, and then their actions, all that's going to follow. And you and I, if we are believers, we live a certain way with hope. And that's the hope that we can offer people. That should be encouraging. Now, this is important because the thing that causes us to feel overwhelmed is most of the time, something we can't control. If we're feeling anxious, a lot of these things right here, a lot of them are things that there are many aspects of these that you can't control. And that's what causes that to come on. Work. Parenting. I mean, we think we can control parenting, but for real, right? Like, we do our best. Some of you have grown kids, and you're like, I did my best, right? You know? We think we have control, and then we realize we don't have as much control as we thought we did, you know? Time. We try to control our time, but sometimes our time controls us. We get into that project, you know, you just want to put up a privacy fence, and you're like, a week later, you're still working on that time, you know? It's not working out. Those things that don't always go away can be tough. When life doesn't change, the one thing we can change is what we do with and how we respond to the stress and anxiety life brings. The one thing you and I can still control is how we respond to the stress and anxiety when it's put on us. We can acknowledge how we're feeling. We can name it. We can name why it bothers us. We can shift our focus to something else that's a reality, and that we can shift our focus to what God's role is in that thing. And this is important. And by the way, Christians, you and I, if you're a believer and a follower of Jesus, we've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. That we don't just name it, we don't just call it out, but we shift our perspective because we can put God into the situation. We can put Jesus into the situation. We can call on the Holy Spirit to empower us and say, Holy Spirit, I don't have the power, I don't have the control, but Holy Spirit, you can help me. And we can put God in the situation with us. And I love how David finishes his psalm. This is how David finishes his time with God. Just look at this. In verse 5, all day long they twist my words. All their schemes are for ruin. Anybody feel like their words get twisted sometimes? Man, for real. They conspire. They lurk. This is all too real right now. This is all too real with some of the things that are going on in our world. They conspire. They lurk. They watch my steps, hoping to take my life. Because of their wickedness, do not let them escape. In your anger, God, bring the nations down. Record my misery. List my tears on your scroll. Are they not in your record? Then my enemies will turn back when I call for help. See, and this is important. When he calls for help, when he's calling on God, then his enemies will turn back. By this I will know that God is for me. In God, and then he goes on in verse 10, in God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise. Look at what he's doing with he's pouring this out in this feeling of what he believes in God. In God I trust, and I am not afraid. What can man do to me? I am under vows to you, my God. I will present my thank offerings to you, for you have delivered me from death and my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before God in the light of life. So I want us to think of it this way. When we think about stress and anxiety, when we think about what to do, there's something I want us to do. When we're pressed, when we're anxious, when we're stressed, it can be helpful to first, this is the cycle of prayer. This can be a cycle of prayer for you. It can be something that you and we use, and I've used this before, and I do believe that it can be really helpful for you if you do it. It's a cycle of prayer. You name the what it is that's bothering you, right? So this is prayer. Whoop. So this is prayer. You're naming the what. That's what we just talked about. So you name the what, and then you name the why. So you go down here, and you name the why. Why is it bothering you? What is going on? And you're talking. Now, this is prayer. This is your conversation between you and God. You can also do this with a family member, someone that you trust. This is, I know, what a lot of counselors will do. They'll name the what, and then they'll talk about the why. Like, why are you feeling that way? Why? What's going on inside of you? So you've got the what, then you're naming the why. And the why is important because you see what he does in Psalm 56 is he's naming the why. Why am I feeling this way, God? Well, my enemies are pressed on all sides. And by the way, they're trying to kill me. All of this stuff. So you're naming the why. And then you have to go over here. You have to get to the who. That's what he does at the end of this psalm. And he spends a lot of time praising God and talking about the who. And then you do that again. So you have the why and then you have the who. You have to get to the who. Without the who, none of the rest of this matters to us as believers. We can't get to the hope and we can't put God into the situation. So here's an example. When you acknowledge the what. Okay, we're arguing all the time. I know, that's nobody. Nobody in here, none of your marriages, but we're arguing. We're arguing, or maybe it's you and your parents or something like that. We're arguing all the time. So you're acknowledging, hey, God, we're arguing all the time. God, I don't understand why, but I keep arguing. And then you go into, okay, the why. I hate walking on eggshells at home, or the mood in our house is always tense, and you're talking about the why. You're telling God, man, the mood in our house, boy, it's tense. I feel like I'm out of control. I feel like people don't act the way they should, or all of that. And then you finally get to the who, and you talk about, God, I know, though, that even if I don't feel in control, God, you are in charge. Or even if my spouse doesn't seem to care, God, I know that you will always care for me. It's not my spouse's job all the time. It's not just my spouse's job. It's God can do that too. He can supply for your every need. So one more time, you name the... Okay, yep, here we go. Ready? You name the... Okay, then you name the... And then you shift your focus on who, right? Yes, who God is. And it can help you see clearly. The idea is to form a habit to focusing on truth and gaining a perspective larger than your current perspective right now. Let's gain a perspective that's larger and bigger than our perspective. There are tools to take on anxiety. And a lot of us, there are tools, you can Google those. A lot of those are going to be different, but this tool right here, the tools to take on anxiety can be a cycle of prayer. It can be something that we see in Psalm 56. Take that psalm and meditate on it and read it over, and you see the cycle that David is in over and over. And I'm going to call the worship team up now. Because when it comes to stress and anxiety, there's no one size fits all, but there are a lot of good tactics that are acceptable that can help you and I cope. But what's not okay, and hear me in this, what's not okay is living with anxiety that holds you back from what you really want to do, want your day-to-day life to look like, all while you keep it to yourself. That is not okay. It is not okay for us to keep it to ourselves. It's not okay for us to bottle it in. Living with anxiety, it can hold you back from what God really wants to do. Living with too much stress, too much anxiety. Here's what I want you to know. If you feel like stress and anxiety have been taking over, we want you to know that this church, the people that you see around here, the people in your life group, those are the people that you can trust. This is a safe place. This needs to continue to be a safe place. And until Jesus comes back, which might be a little sooner than we all thought, right? Until Jesus comes back, this will continue to be a safe place. And here's what I know. What won't happen in Journey Kids, with your kids, what will never happen in real life, what will never happen at Journey Life Church or in your life group, we won't say things like this. You're feeling stressed and anxious. Just have more faith. That's not helpful. You won't hear things like this. Man, nobody else feels that way. Come on. By the way, if anybody says one of these things, you have my permission and the Holy Spirit's permission to just smack them upside the head, okay? Just be like, We don't say those things. Those are like cuss words at Journey Life Church. You won't hear us say, just have more faith. Especially if you're dealing with something like this. Or, man, nobody else feels like that. You're one in a million. Or you have nothing to be stressed about. You'll never hear that in kids. You'll never hear that at Real Life. You should never hear that in your life group. Because this is a safe place. I'm guessing that if I was to guess, if you were to have conversations like this with the people that you care about, that care about you, they probably wouldn't be surprised at all. And most likely, they are feeling the same things as you are. Maybe in a little different way or about a different situation. But as you head out today, we're going to worship to this song just one more time. Is it the bridge that in the You Are My Champion? What's that bridge part? Is that the chorus? What's the other part? There it is. When I open up my mouth. There. That's what I was like, what's that part? Okay, what do they call that? Do they call that the bridge? Okay, bridge. So here's what I want us to do. As you head out today, I want us to stand to our feet. I want us to think about, there are people that can walk through this kind of stuff with you. There are ways to move forward, and there's a God who is absolutely crazy about you and crazy in love with you to help you through it all. But we first have to name the what. So here's what I want you to do as they begin to sing that bridge. The part of I open up my mouth, okay? This is where you're going to name the what of what is stressful or what is anxious. What's giving you that anxious feeling right now in the pit of your stomach that you've been worried about or stressful about? Name it, name the why, and then go to the who, because that's what this song does. It says, you are my champion. So if anything, we can right here name the what, the why, and go right into the who this morning. I want to read the last part of this psalm to you. In God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise, in God I trust and am not afraid. What can mere man do to me? I am under vows to you, my God. I will present my thank offerings to you, for you have delivered me from death and my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before God in the light of life. So as they begin to sing that bridge, I want you to name what it is right now. This is practice. Name the what, name why is it bothering you? And then we're going to go into what put God into the situation.
Every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority. Jesus has given me.
you've given us the tools, and God, you are a good God. You want good things for us. And so, God, we walk out of this place encouraged that we can take on the world and take on what's going on around us with confidence, because we are who you say we are. Amen.
All right. So before you all rush out the door to go get lunch, because I know I'm hungry, so you're probably hungry too. We're just gonna have our ushers or dismiss rows starting from the back and moving to the front. So just don't leave your row until you are dismissed, please. Thank you. Have a good one, guys. Happy Sunday.
Won't forget the wonder of how you brought deliverance, the exodus of my heart. 'Cause you found it, you freed me, held back the waters for my release. Oh Yahweh, sing this with me. You're the God who fights for me, Lord of every victory. Hallelujah, hallelujah. You have torn apart the sea, you have led me through the deep. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Fly by And hallelujah, you've torn apart, and you have torn apart the sea. You have led me through the deep. And hallelujah.